Speaking about success stories, can you give some real life example of how a company was able to optimize their operations and perhaps become closer to decarbonizing, if you can share any example?
I think the biggest improvement is the increased productivity. I think we increased the revenue with the same fleet for several carriers with 10 to 15%. And that means in daily operation that you need less trucks, or you have, for example, less subcontractors, because you can do more with your own fleet. And of course that also directly influences the emissions because we have also examples where we increase and decrease is the better wording, the fuel cost, because we optimize the refueling. And we make sure that if you are in a cheap country like Belgium or Spain, that we then have the right refueling. And then we try to avoid to do the refueling in more expensive countries. And one of our carriers, customers, they saved €2 million a year only by smarter refueling. And I think what we see with several customers, that we enable them to grow without adding staff. Because by using the planning tool and the operator tool, one individual transport manager can control more trucks. So when you have then our product, instead of managing 30 trucks, they can go to 40, 50 or even 60 trucks.
In the same amount of time?
Yeah.
Maybe you can name some specific areas where digital solutions could have the most impact on sustainability, like what would be that area?
Yeah, with our tooling it's really connected to the efficiency and indeed to the empty mileage. And I think it's important that with our tooling, as I mentioned earlier, we can adapt the new green infrastructure. Because I think if you look into making savings and sustainability, in my perception, for example, eco-driving and all the tools they have there are far more important in the daily operation, that drivers learn how to have the eco-driving. But then you need the digital tooling in the truck and the reporting in the truck. I think with our tooling, you make sure that you have the highest efficiency. And that, as said earlier, we then can also introduce the new green solutions and also make sure that they are planned in the right way. Because I have the feeling and the belief that with our tooling, we can help you with the transformation. Because before we are having a green fleet, all 4,500 trucks, or with other carriers, thousands of trucks, that will take 10, 15 years before all the diesel trucks has gone. Because if you look to the OEMs like Volvo and others, they also need time. And now the first trucks are delivered. But last year it was only 5 or 6% was electric trucks. But it takes 10, maybe even 15 years before we have only electric and maybe hydrogen trucks. And that means that the coming 10 years, all planners, all managers, all transport have to deal with diesel trucks, with HVO trucks, electric trucks, with more and more intermodal legs. So every year your network will look different, but also your customers will ask more and more for green solutions. So there will be more and more pressure, also from the customers, to manage the network and to be as green as fast as possible.
Because the demand is growing as well.
Yes,
for these solutions.
Because shippers promised to be green in 2030 or 2030. But if we don't have enough green capacity within 5 years, then they cannot make that promise, because the shippers are depending on the capacity in the market. And I think that play between demand and available capacity, that will be a tough play, with hopefully better prices for the carriers. But we also know that most shippers search for the lowest cost of transport execution, and the willingness to pay for a green solution and to pay a bit more, that is still relatively low. And I think with our tooling, we can help you in managing that and taking the right decisions and make sure that the customers get what they want.
So in this case, there are manufacturers, there are truck operators, there are digital solutions providers like Nexogen. What do you think is the role of cooperation between all these different stakeholders to jointly work towards decarbonization?
I think there is a huge responsibility for everyone in the supply chain. And I think the same counts for us as individuals. We should try to fly less, and the same counts for the industry, together with the shippers and the others in the supply chain. We have to work together to make the supply chain more sustainable. And I think and there digitalization can play a huge role, because we have the examples on synchronizing the supply chain, because there is still a lot of waste in the supply chain. That mentioned that why order every day of every week 5 pallets? Why not order once in the month a full truckload? Things like that. But also there are many time slot bookings, and then many times carriers are too early. So then they have to wait 2 hours because you're not allowed to be too late. So together with the shippers we can go to dynamic time slot booking, and then you will be unloaded when you arrive if there is capacity available. And so there are much more examples where we can work better together, and all the data can help in that to synchronize. And then we will reduce the waste in the supply chain. But it is important that everyone contributes. But there, it's also still negotiations, and people want to make profit, so there are also still other goals and stakeholders when you don't have a balanced supply chain, which makes it difficult.
But what do you think could help to accelerate this process? And what's missing?
Yeah, that's a good question. As I said, it counts for ourselves as individuals. We can shower a bit shorter in the morning, or take the bike to work instead of going by car. And that also counts for all the individual companies. Try to buy more e-trucks, but as long as an e-truck is still more expensive compared to a diesel truck, and the shipper doesn't want to pay, or the consumer behind the shipper doesn't want to pay, because if they are in the supermarket they still select the cheaper cookies and they leave the green cookies on the shelf. So I think due to the climate change we all see now, I think that unfortunately is a good contribution in trying to accelerate, because people are now everywhere aware of it. What needs to happen to make the supply chain green or sustainable? The willingness to cooperate, that's because still a lot of people in the supply chain are still protecting their own business. And we should be far more open in sharing data and sharing ideas, and to make it truly together green. But there are still too many companies within the supply chain fighting for their own existence instead of fighting for the existence of the world, to make it big.
So in this case, do you see any trends or any promising solutions that we have today that will help us to achieve these goals in a few years?
Yes, definitely. I think a very practical but also important example is the growth of public infrastructure for e-charging. And there are now several initiatives like Milange, which will install everywhere in Europe public charging points for heavy trucks. And that will be a big enabler and accelerator also to buy e-trucks and also to use e-trucks for FTL long haul. And that looks very promising, and that will definitely help. I think I said the second thing is the acceleration of the digitalization, because you mentioned already artificial intelligence. But we have nearly everything is nowadays connected with the Internet of Things. So there are more and more possibilities to connect the important points in the supply chain also to the truck, to make indeed reducing the waste, as I mentioned earlier, And that will also be a huge contributor to a more sustainable supply chain. Because I think with geofencing and this dynamic time slot booking, for example, then most warehouses can then directly unload when you arrive at the warehouse. And that means that you can then also quicker go into the next loading address. And then you can indeed do again more work with the same truck in a week.
And probably in a more secure way, so you don't have to wait in a random location.
Yes, and finding the right secured parkings, booking. So everything will go easier, and that means that we will reduce waste together in the supply chain.
With some of our guests, we already covered the topics of lack of infrastructure, for example, for electric vehicles. And in general, there is lack of secure parkings, for example, in Europe. So does this lack of infrastructure affect you as a provider of digital solutions?
No, it will not directly help us. I think what's more important, what I mentioned with the transformation. As a carrier, you will be confronted with this whole change. And the more charging points there are, the faster the transformation can go. And then your planners and dispatch are also more challenged to adapt the new rules and the new trucks. And we can help them to make it happen. So, and if you look from a data point of view, I mean, you have then to maintain also all the charging points. But there, next that carriers maintain their own network, there are also now providers, and like Travis, who maintain all the different point of interest related to a carrier. And they are digital available, and they also give the booking services to them. And we are integrating also with tools like that, so that it is again easier for a carrier to start with a product and to use it, but also benefit from all the digitalization is always going on in Europe. So yeah, it helps each other. But digital solutions itself will never create a sustainability directly. It is the enabler to make it happen. The primary sustainability is in having HVO trucks, intermodal legs, e-trucks, hydrogen, consume less together. I mean, but only with digital tools you can do it smarter, and you can have the connectivity and reduce the waste.
So as a provider of a digital product, are there any steps that you're taking at Nexogen to reduce your own impact on the environment?
I think, of course, I mean, we have also employees and they go regularly to the office, but we have now also the possibility to work from home. So then you have already less movement from and to the office. And we promote also the home working that way. Secondly, we also try to have green energy in the offices by using solar panels and other things. But I think most important in our case is also to be critical on the cloud services we buy. Because with our tooling we make heavy calculations, so we have to buy cloud capacity. But we also try to have limited cloud capacity. So our algorithm experts not only try to find the best way of solving the problem the carriers have, but we also try to reduce the calculations needed. I think the best example is that we introduced the empty distance matrix, so that for all the countries you serve, and even at zip code level, you can define in Spain I allow 200 kilometer empty mileage, and in Germany only 50. But by having this kind of rules as constraints in the system, we reduce the number of possible combinations easily by 50%. And that way we need far less cloud capacity. And that way our plant product is also greener.
So in Nexogen, we covered two main tools that you offer. But is there any new projects or any new solutions that you are providing or will provide soon?
Yeah, I've had in mind now to tell about our latest development. Because with Fleet Planner, we try to make the best assignments from the cargo to the truck. But it many times also happens that you don't have enough loads. And then we have now made the first connections with the digital load boards. And then we search on the digital load boards for loads which will increase the efficiency of the whole fleet. So we're not just filling an empty leg, but we try to find loads and add them into the planning to increase the efficiency of the fleet. And that will have an additional effect again on being more productive, and by that also being more sustainable.
I just don't fully understand the principle that you look for other carriers' shipments and in that way fill the empty gaps?
Now, at the moment, a carrier has 20 trucks in the south of France, but he has only 17 loads. In the next, and he missed 3. So then you need to search for an additional 3 loads. And many carriers have done special people, kind of short-term sales, and they search on Timo.com, or they make a phone call, or they send emails. So they try to find the additional loads. But more and more of these loads are available on digital platforms, or what we say digital load boards. And we have now built a connectivity between our planning tool and the first digital load boards, that our system will directly search for the additional loads. And then not specific for the 3 missing loads, but we look holistic. So we try to find loads which will increase the productivity of these 20 trucks. So instead of searching for specific 3 loads. So it even can happen that you also change the other 17 trucks with another load.
So that's also kind of a new solution, right?
Yes,
kind of innovation.
That's an innovation, yep.
So Walter, since we're finishing with our episode, do you have any specific message for our listeners that you would like to share?
Yes, I think I want to challenge or invite carriers to start or with the digitalization, or even go faster, because I still see too many carriers in Europe doubting about making the next step. And they're still working with the old TMS, with the text fields I mentioned, and they don't use the data in the way you can use the data. And as digitalization goes at the moment so fast, with so many new initiatives, there is a true risk that you will miss the opportunity and to stay connected into the carrier world. So I really want to invite all carriers, please start with the digitalization, and make sure you have a good fundament with a good TMS and a good telematics, and then start using all the tools available, and of course also planning and dispatching tools from Nexogen. But there are so many opportunities, then please don't wait, but act.
Okay, thank you so much, Walter, for joining us and for your insights.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation and for the nice conversation we had.
Thank you. I would also like to thank our listeners for joining us for today's episode. If you'd like to learn more about sustainability, please visit our website and follow us on social media. I'll see you next time. What do you think the future will look like, and would there be AI-driven vehicles and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that's too far away. Because I have my opinion, but I'm not sure if it will add to the story we just did.
No. I mean, you can share with us, but we don't have to include it.
As I mentioned, with this transformation from diesel to e-trucks, that will take already 10 to 15 years. And then you need the toolings like we have to adapt that with all the new rules and customer requirements, and the battle that everyone wants to have a green truck. But this whole digitalization, of course, longer term will also enable trucks without a driver. But there the biggest challenge is legal and insurance. So that will be far more...
Even more challenging.
More challenging.
And dangerous.
Because if there is an incident, you have already this discussion with Tesla in the USA. With trucks, it's even more difficult. But there will definitely probably come separate lanes. And that then, and in huge areas, I can imagine, let's say between Berlin and Hamburg, there will be a separate lane on the motorway. And then trucks can move without a driver. Things like that will come earlier. And I think in China you have already the first unmanned lanes.
Yeah, I think so. They're also changing huge batteries, so it can go non-stop kind of.
But